Hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's edition of TV Talk, brought to you by Ayn Rand Center UK. I'm Mark Pellegrino, and I'm here with the usual suspects, Jennifer Bouani and Jack Schumann. And if you notice that we are looking a little bit dour today, there is a reason for it. We were forced to sit through at least five, sometimes perhaps six, if you guys watch the entire thing, episodes of a Netflix show called Clark. That's right. So I don't know about you guys, but it certainly bummed me out for a lot of reasons, but we'll get into that as the show progresses. Let's just talk a little bit about what Clark is. It is a show on Netflix starring the very cool and interesting Bill Skarsgård, who, for those of you who are into sci-fi and horror, know him as Pennywise the Clown in It. He comes from a very esteemed Swedish acting family. His father's been in some great films, like Breaking the Waves, one of a great film, and what's the other one? Dogville, and more. You'd recognize him, and of course his other brothers in what is it, The Norseman or The Northman, currently out there. The Viking movie that
He was
is
in True Lies, or sorry, True Blood,
yeah,
as well.
He's in True Blood and Secrets and
Big Little
Lies,
Secret. Yeah.
and he's also in the new movie The Northman, which is
Now,
sort
do
of
you
like
think the
Hamlet.
Skarsgårds beat
Hamlet
out
set
the
in.
Helmsworths?
No, they don't. But they're interesting. They're a good crew of people, and they do some good work. But anyway, this movie, Clark, follows the exploits of a supposedly famous Swedish bank robber and gangster, aka also known as criminal, by the name of Clark Olofsson. And apparently, this guy is responsible for the psychological phenomenon we know as the Stockholm syndrome. Um, the punchline of this piece is that a friend of his robbed a bank. He was called in to negotiate a deal with the hostages, and the bank robber ended up staying in there 5 days, developed a relationship, I guess, with the people in the bank who sympathized with the robbers. And this sympathy for victims and victimizer became known as the Stockholm syndrome. The whole situation apparently isn't quite what they claim, but that's a whole other topic that we can get into later. So the story itself is about the life and times of this gangster, who gains notoriety for his brazen acts of terror in the community, his wanton disrespect for the law, his extreme narcissism. I guess that can make you famous even in the 70s, before it became a real thing in current times. And for the man who began the Stockholm syndrome. So it's directed by Jonas Ackerlund, who's apparently a music video director, which shows, I think, in the style
Uh-huh.
of the piece. The
Yeah.
whole 6 episodes reads and runs like an hour-long music video, and if you think that would get on your nerves, you're right. It does. It's a little bit too sensorily overloaded for my taste. But most importantly, we're dealing with an anti-hero in the form of Clark Olofsson, who we're supposed to, through the filmic style and through the things that he does and the way in which he does them, whom we're supposed to like, because he's just sort of a nice zany character, a clown, and we're supposed to not really engage in the things that he does to people. And the filmic style sort of does create a distance between you and the victims of his crime, in an attempt to make you sympathize with Clark. But let's talk about this, guys. Did you sympathize with Clark? What did you think? You could talk about the film, but did you sympathize with him as a man?
Nope, not at all. Narcissist, manipulative. I guess it was supposed to be funny, or entertaining, but it just did not work for me. Unlike an anti-hero like Breaking Bad, Walter White, where you're brought into his story to begin with, and then you go on the journey of him becoming bad. This one, he just was born bad. He was just born annoying, born narcissistic. And I
I
just could
disagree
care.
slightly on that. I don't think he was born bad. He was very badly abused.
Well, they
Yeah,
do
but
try. They do try to throw in the abuse
all
narrative.
this was like this little jokey thing, like him giving the wedgie to the police officer. And I don't mean they make a light of it.
Yeah, I mean, they do try to throw in little personal touches where you see his psychopathic mother and alcoholic and abusive father, and I guess those pieces are thrown in there to deepen your sense of sympathy and identification with the guy. But they're also done in the same style, so there's an anti-realism about it that doesn't really draw you in emotionally. And when you think of characters like Walter White, I mean, you think of guys that start out with a noble purpose, a man who's diagnosed with cancer, who has no money, who doesn't want to leave his family with nothing, and tries to endow his family going forward with a fortune that will enable them to live the rest of their lives in comfort. Well, that's noble, and anybody can get behind that. If you think of the character in Catch Me As You Can, Frank Abagnale, Jr. That character had sort of a noble purpose to begin with as well. I think he wanted to avenge his father's debt, and I don't remember precisely, but and repay that, and was sort of determined to do that at first, and to put him on the wrong side of the law. A noble purpose that we can get behind, and that's sort of the save the cat moment, right? There's a for anybody who doesn't know what Save the Cat is, there's a screenplay writing program called Save the Cat that sort of requires your character to do something good in the very redeemable in the very opening pages of the script, so that everybody identifies with him, and they call it saving the cat. If he saves the cat from the burning building, well, he must not be all that bad. There is no save the cat moments in Clark. There's no
I disagree.
Oh, go ahead.
It comes in. It comes way too late. But it comes in episode 6. Which did you watch the last episode, Mark?
I didn't, but a save the cat moment is supposed to take place in the
You're
very
right.
opening scenes of the film.
Yeah,
Right. That's the whole point, to
yeah,
create sympathy. If you the last point, then it's not a save the cat moment.
yeah. So I thought when they showed all of the samples of abuse, I mean, his father was I think more a psychopath than his mother, as you see in later flashbacks throughout the series. But I mean, his father gave Clark, when he was 6 years old, a loaded gun, and thought it wasn't loaded, and the father started firing it, and it ends up shooting the mother, and gets really pissed off that everybody's yelling at him, and he just walks out, leaving the mom to bleed to death. That was going to happen. He didn't give a crap. And Clark, as a young boy, just sitting there traumatized. But that kind of stuff tends to have the opposite effect on me, in terms of am I supposed to feel empathy for this character when he goes out and behaves so badly and treats women like absolute crap, and has no regard for the law, and just uses people, as soon as he's done with them, just turns his back on them? That has the opposite effect on me. I can't, especially if somebody has grown up in like a traumatic situation. They usually don't want to inflict what was inflicted on them on other people. And but the only weirdly, I wouldn't even call it redeeming moment, but it was at least the moment where he acted like a freaking human, is when in episode 6 he's supposed to have gone straight, right? He's in Belgium, and but really what we find out is he's supposed to be in Belgium with his current wife and his boy, and doing the legit thing. But we find out that he's had a side hustle of drug trafficking this whole time, and the cops are raiding his house while he's coming back from taking his boy to the park in a stroller, and he had a whole bunch of drugs on him. He breaks into a car and contemplates just leaving the son in his stroller, saying, "Mom will find you, don't worry about it." And then you have this, then he goes through this flashback of his father being horrible to him, and he's like, "No, I can't do that. I can't leave you." And then he tries to get away, but then the police barricade him in, and he's about to fight because he's got a gun, and then he looks over at his son, and he just, and again, all the flashbacks of his father. He's like, "No, I can't do it. I give up. I give up." And but to me, it was too little, too late, especially as it came sort of at the end. I did love the choice that the journalist who signed up to write his book made at the end. She's been like interviewing him, wants to write a book about his life, and then in the end she visits him in jail where he's serving a 10-year sentence for drug trafficking, and says, "I finished the book." And he's like, "Oh, that's awesome. It's all about me, me, me." And she's like, "Yeah, I'm not publishing it because all the people that I talked to in your life, you've ruined their lives, and you're not important anymore." And I loved it. It was like the perfect, kind of fu, and it was the right thing to do, I think.
Moment. It was an important moment because it's the one little inkling you get that this maybe the rest of the story was some unreliable narrator story, and you don't know how much of it was truth, how much was hyperbole, just building himself up, even the backstory stuff. And this moment, you get the sense that there's some truth there, and the journalist saying that.
Yeah, well, maybe I'm missing something because the story is told from Clark's point of view, and in a sense, we're in his head and seeing things as he would probably see them and interpret them as he's probably interpreting them. So maybe I'm missing the brilliance of that kind of storytelling. But I personally couldn't get past the very obvious fact that he had no regard for human life at all,
Right.
no regard for the happiness of others,
Right.
no regard for being a valued member of the community, no regard for producing value. His idea of freedom, was the Nietzschean idea of freedom, the cliche that the altruists throw in our face as the other possibility, which is sacrificing other people to yourself as opposed to being the sacrificial animal. And he had a ready host of victims. If anything, it told me how awful people are at judging character and how far charm can go with people. And that many folks out there are gullible and want to see what they want to see rather than what is out there. And that's a little scary. But this makes me think of Atlas Shrugged. And oftentimes we have to strain to make connections to Atlas Shrugged. But in this case, I'm not so sure that we have to, because these two projects, Atlas Shrugged and Clark, are absolute opposites of each other.
Polar opposite, yeah.
Polar opposites. In one, we have an expression of values, a concretization, as objectivists would say, of values in life pursuit. In the other, the exact opposite, what it looks like to be an anti-value, as a matter of fact. The fact that this thing could go on for 6 episodes and get funded by Netflix is frightening.
And it's
Yeah.
got a 7.4 out of 10 on IMDb, which is, not insignificant. I wasn't expecting those kinds of ratings, and it's
And it's mostly got a Ripe Tomatoes review as well, only a couple of Rotten Tomato reviews, which just makes me feel a little less hope for the culture, that it gets caught up in the bright, shiny objects and the glitz and the fast cuts and the zany storytelling, as opposed to what the characters are doing, why they're doing it, and what the impacts of what they're doing have on other people. It's like an exercise in sociopathology. How do you not experience feelings for your fellow man? Well, just watch this show and watch the style in which it's filmed, and you'll see how you don't develop relationships with anyone.
yeah.
It's
Allie asked a really good question that I was literally just about to bring up. And Marilyn, thank you for the $2. Allie for $10 asked Jackson Jennifer, can we talk about how terrible he was in bed? LOL. Everyone he slept with were like, that's it? Then he keeps playing with the women and using them afterwards. Narcissistic much? Yes. He was like a one and done, 5-second man Like he's like, baby, this is going to be the best you ever had. And it
Yeah,
was,
he had premature ejaculation syndrome going on there, and so for all his charms, it had to have fallen flat in the bedroom, and it didn't. These
bada
people
bing.
still these yeah these people these people still kept coming. Um, I don't
Okay.
know, and all of his clowning around and not taking life seriously, to not taking anyone seriously. Um, I found it repugnant on every level.
Mhm.
That's not my version of a rebel. My version of a rebel isn't somebody who acts as if there are no laws in the world, natural laws or human laws. That's not a rebel to me. It's an idiot.
Yeah.
It's a fool.
Hank and Francisco are rebels. Ragnar is a rebel. That's a great
Galt.
version of breaking the law for good rebellious reasons.
Right. And
Right.
Galt is a rebel. They
Yeah.
understand the way the world works, and they understand how society itself is in rebellion against those values, the natural law, and they are in rebellion against that denial of natural law, right? So and that
I
makes them
think
rebels.
it is interesting kind of why they chose to focus on what he was like in bed, and I wonder how much of that is actually from the real story, or if it was something that the writers decided that they needed to put in there. But the you would to really kind of play out the gangster, hot dude lifestyle, you would think that they would turn him into a really good lover. But what I do like about what they chose to portray instead was his complete inability to connect with other people and to be intimate, right? If he was this amazing lover, there would have been intimacy. There would have been, then I could have been like, yeah, I see why. That can blind us all, right? But that they chose to have the briefest amount of connection, of physical connection between him and other women, I thought was really well done. However they intended it, it came off to me as just yet another proof point of how completely unempathetic this man is for anything and anyone around him.
Yeah, it certainly highlighted the fact that he didn't care about anyone except his getting off himself. That's all that mattered. Um, yeah, so there's nothing remotely interesting about this character. Nothing remotely interesting about this character. Why waste so much time producing a story about a guy who has no redeeming value?
Yeah,
Wow.
because it was a. Sorry, Jennifer, go ahead. What were you going to say?
I was just saying, I don't know. I asked the same thing. What was the point of making the story? It didn't really have much of a plot. And the whole reason I got excited about it was I was like, the trailer looked cool and fun and exciting. And it was going to tell us about the backstory behind the Stockholm Syndrome,
Hmm.
how that was coined. But they never really get into that. I mean, they kind of hint around it with the bank heist and the chick that was in the I don't know,
The
bank,
vault.
the vault, yes, the bank room.
The bank room, where they keep the money.
And but then I was reading this article where that woman, Kristen Enmark, she claimed that she just thought that the police were incompetent and that her best option was to kind of play along with this guy in order to survive, and that the whole thing was bullshit. So, but they don't address that. They address that in the show. That would have been interesting, at least tie it
Yeah.
in. We'll see another side, but they don't even go there at all.
Yeah, see, now it's one thing if you're if the character is this kind of rogue and he's completely imaginary, right? And he's flouting the laws in a way like a Robin Hood. They even reference Robin Hood at some point when they talk about going to Sherwood Forest. Um, then there can be something interesting about it. But the fact that this guy is real uh, makes it far, far worse And the fact that only 2 reviewers, I think, really are impacted by the missing fact that there's a lot of human um, casualties and wreckage that he left in his wake. Lots of people were hurt by this guy. And all of them are lost in the stylistic approach of this piece that makes it like a long running episode of Benny Hill.
Mm-hmm.
It's like you don't really ever get the sense that that these people were just crushed by him. Maria, the one that he claimed to be in love with and was the love of his life, who had so much faith that he was reforming and becoming better. I mean, you're never allowed into her psyche, into the devastating fact that she's betrayed over and over and over and over again. Everybody's just a clown.
Mhm.
Now,
The only person that really seems who you're actually kind of invited into his head just a little bit is the cop who Tommy Johnny or whatever his name was, Tommy Dolly, Tommy Dummy, whatever. But the cop who's kind of, the his nemesis, his arch nemesis, who is so disappointed in Clark because he sees that he's got such potential, and he's like, why do you keep screwing up? You have the ability to actually be a good man, and you're so smart and to do good things. And then at the end, when Clark is sentenced to 10 years after he supposedly had gone straight, the cop is sitting there in the courtroom, and Clark looks at him like expecting a different reaction than what he gets, and what he gets from the cop is total disappointment and sorrow. Like, and you could, like, the cop didn't say anything, but you could see in his face, he's like, God, I had you all wrong. And it was, so even the cop in the end realized the potential that he thought Clark had was just not there. But that's the thing. That's why these women fell for him, is for the potential. They see something brilliant in him. They see something cunning, and oh, if only he could use his powers for good. And they keep hoping that he'll turn it around and be this brilliant man, but it never happens. And then at some point, when that potential never actualizes, you have to ask yourself, I think maybe I was wrong about the potential. Maybe there is no potential.
Maybe
yeah, and I think
fall in love with the potential.
yeah, so they say, but I had a similar experience in the sense that and maybe this is why I couldn't go on the ride. Personally, I've been involved with a sociopath in my life early on, one of the first relationships I had, and it was almost identical to the Maria relationship with Clark, where you see something that is potentially there but not expressing itself, right? You see the person's brilliance and energy and their command over other people, their charisma, and all of those things are dynamic and powerful. And you see that if those things could be harnessed for good, that the person would be an enormously powerful force in the world. But it's not. And that person in the narrative is never really sympathized with. She just seems like a fool, and he just blows her off easily and moves on to the next one who he's equally in love with, as if whatever happened previously was just in the moment. It may be so, but it has no lasting impact on his life. So I sort of wanted to see impacts that weren't there. I wanted to feel a sense of justice that may not happen in real life with people who become enablers, who become used or allow themselves to be used by these people because they're so focused on the potential of the person rather than the actuality. I wanted to see something more there, and I never got it. You know what I mean? And I not only never got it, it wasn't not only not explored, it was just, the whole movie was a romp. it was a romp, and there's something nihilistic about a romp through a nihilist's world, right? Who's hurting people left and right and doesn't care that he's hurting people left and right. There's something wrong about
Yeah,
what you can't laugh at that. You
right,
can't laugh at that.
when they robbed the bank and left the dynamite behind, and then somebody in the bank flipped the switch and the whole thing blows up. They treated it like a sitcom. They treated it like it was freaking comedy. But then people are coming out with like limbs blown off their arms. Certainly people died, and they never focused on any of that.
No.
And that, I don't know who to blame for that. Do I blame the writers, the directors? Do I blame
Yes,
Clark
you
Olafson?
well,
Like,
you blame writers and directors for I guess promoting something with
yeah.
so little value. Like when we saw Station 11, we saw a post-apocalyptic sci-fi piece that didn't focus on the horrors of apocalypse, but on the building and maintenance of culture and creation. Now that's a beautiful thing to focus on. The other thing is so typical. But what this person does is they revel in the destructiveness and the lack of value that a person brings. They turn it into a comedy. And it would be bad enough if this weren't real, if the characters were entirely fictional, it would say something pretty disgusting about the person's sense of life who can revel in stuff like that. But the fact that they're real, these people existed, and this damage that happened actually happened to people.
Right.
To turn that into a comedy is to laugh at nihilism, is to laugh at into like moral anarchy. And there's nothing laughable about that.
A school shooter and making it glorifying and making that funny. Nobody would find that funny. It's the same thing to me.
Say the first part again, Jennifer. I couldn't hear what you
You
said.
took a school shooter and
Oh,
turned
right,
it into a comedy,
right.
and made it funny and like glorified that. Nobody would find that funny. To me, it's the same thing. I feel the same way when I watch this. I don't know that other people, but they'd feel that way about a school shooter.
You look, I think the reason they get away with it is because for the most part, he robbed banks. And who likes bankers? Who likes rich people? Who likes capitalists? Here comes my cat invading my space.
Sneaky.
He broke down the door to get here. Who likes those guys? So it's in a way they get away with the nihilism because it's attacking the politically correct groups of people that need to be attacked, right?
I'm sorry, it's just too cute.
Mark, sorry.
We're taking a station break for cat for kitty porn.
We needed
So-
that because
couple-
the story of Clark is too
It was
depressing.
getting too heavy. Well, we've got a couple super chat questions. Allie for $5. Thank you, Allie. I'm confused on the plot hole. What happened to Clark's siblings? He has a photograph of the supposed sister, and they were in the flashbacks. Yeah, there were two other kids, and
wait a minute. There's a plot.
Yeah. Yes, yeah. Strike one, Allie. There's a plot hole assumes that there's a plot to have a hole in.
There's not a plot. There's not a plot. It's just one thing happens after another. There's no
just-
direction
yeah.
in the guy's life. It's just so.
One thing, yeah. Yeah, Lou for £5. This is a really interesting question. I'm curious to see how you guys would answer this. If Netflix had asked you to make this show, how would you have approached telling the story? Is there a way you could reframe it to make it watchable? It's a good question. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know.
Different
I
point
don't
of
know.
view.
That's a question that can't be answered spontaneously, particularly since I haven't thought a great deal about the piece.
I would have made it a true unreliable character. I would have made it a true unreliable narrator story, and then kind of gone back and like his version versus the reality of it, and how other people's lives were affected. The way he saw himself versus the impact that he had on the world. We don't see enough of the real devastating impact he has on all the people that he hurts. Because you just, as soon as he's done ruining one woman, he goes on to the next, and you never see what happens to her after that until the very, very end, where the journalist comes back and says, "Look, I was going to write this book about you, but then I talked to everybody who ever knew you, and you ruined them all." And it kind of shows flashes of all their faces and stuff,
I
but it
feel like
wasn't
that's
enough.
I feel like that's a pang of conscience on the part of the filmmakers.
Yeah,
they
because they
had to
spent an entire 5.5 episodes, nearly 6 episodes glorifying him, and then the last 5 to 10 minutes, oh no, he's really a bad guy.
yeah,
Figure out
maybe
he's the
we
big
should show a conscience. Maybe we should show that we have a conscience and actually recognize that this guy ruined a lot of lives.
career going.
What?
So we can keep our career going. Let's show
Yeah,
that.
Yeah, I think their careers are enhanced by a 7.4 rating on IMDb and by an essentially critically acclaimed piece of work that I don't think people are going to identify as really, really nihilistic.
Mm.
I mean, with that, this is the culture in which we live. I think nihilism I
Do you think he
dominates.
was more? Do you think Clark is more nihilist than narcissist, or just an insane combination of both?
The piece is nihilist, but the Clark himself is a narcissist.
Mm.
Yeah, I
Or
mean,
sociopath, probably.
promoting this guy as anything interesting is nihilistic.
Yeah.
I mean, it flies in the face of natural law, man-made law, relationships. I feel like I feel like it was made by a 5-year-old who is rebelling against the rules of the house,
Mhm.
and Clark became his ideal. Is you can't be an adult and watch this and think that there's anything um, remotely interesting, as in non-terrifying about the things that this guy's doing. I mean,
Hmm.
he's so awful. So and no smiles, no sideways smiles or winks or flirting. None of that heals it. None of that makes up for all the terrible things that he does. It's not like Lucifer and Supernatural, where Lucifer could do the same types of things, but it's a made up character. All the characters are made up. So there's a certain leeway you have with respect to that being's character. It could be that way, and there's things you can admire about it within the universe. So you can't do that with this guy. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, because he is a real person. And I'm thinking now also of other movies that have been told the stories of serial killers, or real life Monster with Charlize Theron, uh, um, um, Ted Bundy. I can't remember but it was the one that Mark Harmon played, the movie. And
There's
yeah,
there's a few of them on serial killers.
and they, I mean, in Silence of the Lambs, of course, but I mean that was like half fiction, but
But that's a lionization too of the serial killer. They
mhm.
Hollywood likes to make serial killers
And
into
sociopaths,
into misunderstood geniuses.
right?
They're really almost superhuman, like Hannibal Lecter. Well, no, they're not. They're completely ineffectual human beings who have a really twisted sense
They eat
of
people's brains. you know?
yeah, they have a twisted sense of joy and pleasure. To get joy and pleasure from torturing somebody and dominating them and murdering them is really twisted. There's nothing good about it. There's nothing heroic about it. There's nothing remote. There's nothing that should be promoted in Hollywood as being a high value or interesting. They
But
do
I
it, I
would,
guess, to, to
yeah.
to come up with villains that are big in stature, to fight against the heroes, but
I would
it's still
rather watch
misplaced.
Silence of the Lambs um,
Yeah,
over
but you
Clark,
can't
though.
compare that because Silence of the Lambs 1 is not a comedy, and he's
Yeah,
not the protagonist. We're not watching it from his point of view, and we're not making light of it. It's not a
yeah,
completely different situation.
yeah. So, Mary Aline for $2. I love your cat, Mark. Uh, thanks, Mary Aline. And Allie for $5 asks, "What language did y'all watch this in? OG Swedish with subtitles. They love their Helvet and fan swear words." I watched it in Swedish with subtitles.
I watched
Yeah.
it like about halfway through, and then I was so over it that I switched it. I never, ever, ever do this, ever. But for the first time, I switched it to them dubbing over English because I just wanted to get through it.
What about you, Mark?
Yeah, I listened to it, the original with subtitles.
Yeah. And I thought that they did a pretty good job with the subtitles as compared to Squid Game, which I thought the subtitles were absolutely hideous for Squid Game. But that's
What does
another.
that mean? They're
Huh?
hideous. Like, are they
Well,
translated
so
wrong?
sometimes they
They were
blend into the.
translated terribly. The subtitles for Squid, they were just translated terribly,
How do you know
and
that? How do you know that? You speak.
um, because
What's
I
the
know
difference?
some Koreans, and
Oh,
actually my daughter's volleyball coach is Korean, and he could barely get through it. He said that it wasn't the dialogue that, like, what they subtitled wasn't the dialogue. Now I don't speak Swedish, so again, I guess I should talk to some Swedes to see if if the subtitling was accurate. But then even when the worst part in Squid Games for me was when they switched to English. They had the horrible, evil, fat capitalist speaking English, and it was like, oh, can't you just get actual English writers, like English speaking writers? I mean, it was like they put it through Google Translate or something, and said, here, say these lines.
yeah. I see somebody has written a question. Mindhunter was interesting show about two FBI agents in the '70s trying to develop psychology by talking to serial killers to see if they could predict future serial killers. Now, I'm not a fan of the show, but I am a huge fan of John Douglas and of the book he wrote, Mindhunters. Yet still, this is about value creation. It's about people bending their imaginations and their minds towards the task of understanding a particular type of criminal so that they can profile them and make the search, narrow the search in such a way as to find the criminal more effectively. So to me, that's still in the pursuit of value, as opposed to this show, which is 6 episodes of running away and doing nothing remotely human, right? Creating no value, pursuing nothing constructive
Yeah.
in life at all, other than the pursuit of liberty, which means having no boundaries or respect for anyone in your universe around you, and that's just sort of horrible.
He is the definition of antisocial, the DSM-5 definition of antisocial, which is he really considered himself to be totally above the law, very Nietzschean. Um, but I agree too. I really loved the book Mindhunter. I really liked the TV show as well. They
I
were
did too.
both.
What did you not like about it, Mark? Sorry, Jackson.
Yeah, no, no, no.
I
What?
only,
Yeah,
I
what
only,
didn't you like
I
about
only
Mindhunter?
watched a couple episodes. I wasn't a fan of. I liked the guy who played Ed Kemper, but I wasn't a fan of the actors.
Oh, okay.
And I don't necessarily think it should have been made into a show. It's a very interesting book. It's a book that actors could read, for any aspiring actors out there, for the right way to work on a part, because John Douglas approaches every crime scenario the way an actor should approach a scene. He uses his imagination and his mind to reconstruct the events, and he gets into the minds of both the victim and the killer, which is no small feat, with his imagination. And he lives through the experience, and that's how he's able to come up with a psychological profile.
Hmm.
So it's a pretty fascinating process that eventually gave him a nervous breakdown at some point, which is talked about in the book. I don't know if they do it in the series.
Hopefully that won't happen to you.
As an actor.
Well, I mean, it has happened to many actors. They say Heath Ledger sort of went over the edge with the Joker, and they say Philip Seymour Hoffman had issues after playing Willie Loman in Death of a Salesman, that sent him back into drug addiction. You know, the perilous part of acting is you're assuming certain values, and if you ingest those values seriously, they can hurt. They can hurt if you're not careful. I have experienced. What's that?
I feel the same for screenwriting. There have been, I mean, in several of the scripts that we've written, there are some really dark passages and very difficult things to write, and I'm usually in a very foul mood for several days while I'm doing that. And in fact, there's one that we're going to be starting to write, another TV show that we're going to start writing a pilot for, and I'm already not looking forward to the extra therapy bills I'm going to have to go through to deal with it. You have to, because you literally, it's like, I have to make this character say these words that I mean, just like, you know, but you do to be authentic, and it kills you to do it. It feels good that you are being authentic, but it's still at the same time, you have to get into that mindset. You have to get into that flow. You have to channel, you know, you as the character, and in order to do that, there's a price to pay for that. You can't do it without coming away untouched.
Yeah, I mean, the good news is, you know, you're in the process of creation, and something in your subconscious understands that. So there can be a joy and a discovery while you're experiencing those emotions that can be counter elements to letting that malignancy into your life. But, you know, if you go full method, you know, method is sort of a pretentious term, but it just means a type of immersion that some actors like to practice. Where you fully ingest those values, and you're not so consciously engaged in a process of creation. You're more trying to embody these ideas. That can be really, really dangerous. I think it's mostly a young actor problem than an older actor problem. It's working too much when you don't need to do that much in reality.
How do you think Bill Skarsgård did as in this role of Clark, as from an act, just a pure acting?
He's just a clown. He's just playing a clown. You know, I don't know that he would have to touch any of the psychological dynamics of the actual guy. All he has to do is have fun in every scene and make every scene about a party, basically. You know, how is he going to squeeze a joke out of this moment? You know, that guy, that, you know, and that's not damaging to play.
I didn't think that he, you know, whether he wasn't convincing enough or the writing wasn't convincing enough, but I know that there's something wrong when I'm looking at a character and I see them as an actor in makeup. And that's how I felt with Skarsgård. It's like, oh, there's Bill Skarsgård. He's in a beard. Now he's got a pot belly. Now he's, you know, wearing a different costume. And when I don't even see the actor, when I don't even, you know, like the guy who played Detective Box on The Night Of, and is also starring with you in Rust, as the old guy. I mean, just unrecognizable from not just in makeup but in demeanor, and you know, you're just so drawn into this character that you don't think of them as an actor anymore. And that's the success, I think, in acting, is you're not looking at them as an actor. Like, I still can't look at Jack Nicholson today and go, oh, that's this character. That's Jack Nicholson.
Yeah, and sometimes that's the problem with becoming super famous like that. It's hard not to see the actor and the person and an actor with such a strong personality as Jack Nicholson, it's hard to see that he's doing something more than just, being a quirky personality. And I could definitely lose that in his early films, Five Easy Pieces, Chinatown,
One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. I don't see Jack Nicholson, even though there's really nothing in his behavior that's altered. He's the same man in all of those with the same characteristics, but he's just so alive and vibrant and poetic and different, original. That he's arresting, right? And just like you can see Marlon Brando, who was, a very famous character actor, known for accents and makeup and changing his appearance for things, but you see him in The Wild Ones and Streetcar Named Desire, on the Waterfront, his slight characterization. He has different accents and slightly different thing going on, but there's Marlon all through and through. Last Tango in Paris, The Godfather, Marlon through and through with slight character adjustments, but it's so arresting and original, the things that he's doing. If you haven't seen The Wild Ones, you have to watch that. If you haven't seen Streetcar Named Desire,
Streetcar Named Desire, but I'll watch The Wild Ones. I haven't seen that one.
He's just, watch him and compare him to the other actors there. Even the Iwo Jima hero, he got a silver star in Iwo Jima. Now I can't remember his name. Very fine actor. Anyway, he plays his opposite, his antagonist. Even against a good actor like that, Marlon is just in a different universe. But that's a whole other tangent. I think,
and that could be actually that. I mean, because I think one of the shows that we're planning on doing is The Offer. And that will be interesting to see. For those of you who don't know, The Offer is a TV series based on the making of The Godfather. So it'll be interesting to see if the actor who plays Brando can actually pull off Brando.
There's a lot of good imitators of Brando out there.
Yeah.
He's so distinct. Look, I mean, to me, Skarsgård is playing the devil, but a fun devil, a devil who has fun, making a mess. That's sort of what attracts people to the character of Lucifer in Supernatural. He's a devil who has fun making a mess. Difference is this guy's real and Lucifer isn't.
and so also, I think that there's more depth, though, to Lucifer. There's more. I mean, there's just. Granted, sorry, Mark, I haven't seen every episode of Supernatural, but
what's wrong with you?
I'm because we don't do it on the show. We should if I'm gonna watch 15 seasons of Supernatural, we have to do it as a show.
Yeah.
But no, I felt like there was no depth to Clark. It was they tried. So kind of wrapping this up, I think, because I don't know that there's much more that we can say about this. Before I do that, is your cat's name Cody?
Yeah, it's Cody.
Okay, so Allie is for $2 super chat. Here's $2 for Cody only and no one else. So you have to get Cody some treats, I think, for $2. So yeah, I don't think that they didn't do a good job of bringing in his backstory to show empathy. If anything, for me, it had the opposite effect. If you grow up in such a horrible lifestyle, why would you just inflict this on other people?
You're right, and there were some moments where the death of his father comes as an interesting moment in the script. It's a bit of a moment where you get to pause and see beneath the veneer, the fun veneer, whatever his outside personality quirks come to a halt, and he wrestles with the complexity of that relationship with his father. Now, I might have personally identified with that because that guy's father was very much like my stepfather. So for me, I understood the complexity of growing up with a man who's despicable, but at the same time being what he is in your life, the only father figure that you know, there is a sense of real loss. I mean, I think he blows it off at some point, but for me, there's a sense of real loss when that person is out of your life, and it's just a extremely complicated moment. And there were lots of potential places to mine those deep psychological potholes that were uh, in that guy's life, but it would have gone contrary to the story's
Yeah.
style. I
And
mean,
any time that they hinted at that they hinted at what was going on underneath, they kind of pull the rug out from you, and they go on to a different topic, or they he becomes glib again, or he laughs it off. And especially I do want, like, if you have a chance to watch the very last episode, because I'm curious what your take on that is, if you can stand it. But I had said that the journalist comes in, and she comes and visits him in jail and tells him, I'm not writing your manuscript because you did all these terrible things. And she asks him a question, so I want to know, Clark, what's it like to be Clark Olofsson? And she had asked him that question before, and it turned into like a music video, like a Miami Vice music video. He's like, I'm the best, da da da. And then and then at the very end, she says that, and she says, I'd like to know what it's like to be Clark Olofsson. And he doesn't say anything. He's just very much in his, like, oh shit, this book isn't going to get written about me. I'm not important anymore. What has my whole life been about? He has this look. She leaves him, and you see the video, the surveillance camera of the jail, the visiting room in the jail. And it would have been great if it just ended there, with him being pitiful and broken and unimportant, and nobody cares about you anymore. But then he breaks the fourth wall, and looks at you and says, what's it like to be Clark Olofsson? I don't know, I'm just getting started. And so it, like, ruins the whole, like, pitifulness of it, and you're kind of left with shit.
yeah.
Nothing, nothing affects him.
The malignant narcissist is irrepressible. They're never put down. It's one of the reasons so many people admire sociopaths, because they're not affected by the things that affect most of us, and there's a part of them, I think, that likes that and wants that. I remember you guys, us talking about that Rand writing in her 20s about a serial killer whom she admired for certain reasons, that you could see a young person going in the direction of seeing somebody like that as a rebel against arbitrary
Living by his own
rules,
set of rules.
living by his own set of rules and not being beholden to anything put upon him by anybody else. There's a romantic attraction to stuff like that. So movies like this probably do appeal to young people who feel like the rules that confront them don't have any basis in reality. They're just things that people make up, and it's actually strong. You're actually a strong, independent person to go against them. So I don't know. Maybe this thing works for 15-year-olds. I don't recommend any adults see it. It's an anti-valuers movie. Maybe it's just so brilliantly lampooning the idea of not being a valuer that we're missing the hidden message underneath. But I just think it's an attempt to I don't know, lionize a guy who deserves no further publicity.
Yeah.
Who has a life that amounted to nothing, and has done nothing productive, and has left a human wasteland in his wake.
Mm-hmm. Yep, I agree. I watched the first two episodes with my 17-year-old daughter, so I'm gonna have to go back to her and get her feedback. She was entertained by it, but she's put off by, like, when we watch it, she's exhausted from 4 hours of volleyball and whatever, and like the last thing she wants to do is sit there and read subtitles. So But she was entertained by it. I just haven't had a further discussion. So I wonder if younger people do prefer it, or if younger
I,
people will react to it in a different way than we would.
yeah, I think they would, because it has all the bells and whistles that interests people with the attention span of a minute and a half.
Hmm.
It draws you in with the bells and whistles.
It's a really long reel. It's a 60-minute reel, right? Instagram reel.
Yeah, sort of. I mean, sort of in that realm.
Uh,
Um,
Mary for $2, I guess in reference to your cat, Jennifer, another cat. So I think that means you have to give your
Oh,
cat $2 of treats.
yeah. And he loves. He
Allie's
must have.
asking, Allie's asking if there's going to be a clubhouse. No, we didn't think that there would be like, you know, I think we're fairly done with this show. So we would like to save the clubhouse for something that we can all really get excited about and talk about in an animated way that doesn't make us like feel like we need to take a shower afterwards. Not that there's anything wrong with Clubhouse. I love everybody on Clubhouse. I love all the people that could, I just mean the topic of it is like, it's a hard, it's a difficult, it's a Debbie Downer. Rachel, for like a couple of times now wants to do Boys season 3 Clubhouse. Yes, we will do a Boys season 3 Clubhouse. I just don't think that we're not going to do a TV talk on it because we've already covered the boys. But I would love to do a season 3 Clubhouse for the boys. So we'll figure that out soon. And Ellie says Stranger Things. You mean a Clubhouse or a? Because we already did Stranger Things, right? We already did the last season of Stranger Things. So maybe you're meaning a Stranger Things Clubhouse. We need to do a lot of clubhouses. And then Rachel says we need to talk about Jensen Ackles breaking Prime. Okay. Anyhow, all right, guys. So I think that we've wrapped this up. And what do we have on the slate for the next show? And when is that going to be?
So the next show on our slate is Mr. Sunshine, which is going to be full of so much more sunshine than this episode of Clark. I don't think it's 24 episodes. I don't think Mark can get it all watched in 1 week. So I'm
Have
not
you
sure
started
exactly.
it yet, Mark?
I started it when I was in the hospital on my cell phone, but I couldn't read the subtitles. Everything was too small.
Okay. And we're all welcoming Mark back from a healthy for a healthy recovery. Are you still feeling good?
So far, so good.
Awesome.
All
All right,
right, guys.
so we want to do. We'll figure out dates. I think for Mr. Sunshine because we've got to work with all of our working schedules, but we will have that posted on our website bushuscripts.com as well as ARCUK. We'll post that somewhere, I'm sure, once we get that figured out. So, done with Clark. Clark Olafson is dead.
We don't have to review it again. All right, guys. So that was this episode of TV Talk with the usual suspects: Mark Pellegrino, Jennifer Bouani, and Jack Schumann. We will see you next time with Mr. Sunshine. Until that time, good premises. Peace.